Gene, you need to get back in there too. We don't even have to be economically vigilant or politically vigilant. We need to be spiritually vigilant. We need to know that God is in control of our world. We need to have our hope firmly placed on Him, and we need to be awake for when these things happen. The cosmic tumult will make it obvious to everything. This universe is just going to be shattered. Everything in the world will be aware at this time. When Jesus Christ comes back, it's not going to be something that's done in a closet. Jesus Christ is going to come back and everyone will know. The images that we see here come from visions that people had in the Old Testament. Now there is something that is happening here also that is kind of strange, because these might not be signs of the end. They might be the reaction to the end. The way that this verse reads and the way the context is set up is that the stars and the moon and the sun all being shaken and all of these signs might be a reaction to what Jesus Christ coming back rather than a sign that Jesus Christ is going to come back. So even this might not be a sign that Jesus Christ is coming. It might be the reaction to that. And again, I don't know. I don't know. God's going to do it His way, and we're all going to know it. Jesus coming, though, He tells us very clearly. He says His angels will go out throughout the earth and gather His elect together. They will gather His children to Himself, and that we can rely upon. You don't have to rely upon my vision or my interpretation of prophecy. You don't have to rely upon anybody's vision of prophecy. You can rely on the fact that Jesus Christ is going to bring us to Himself. That you can count on. And we need to understand that and place that deep inside of our hearts. No matter what we go through, Jesus Christ will come for His own. He will keep us, and He will bring us to Himself. And that is the secret to our survival. Finally, we come to these final warnings. Jesus gives some parables, and they are all wrapped inside or all try to explain this announcement that no one knows the timing of the end. No one knows the timing of the end. The angels don't know. Jesus Himself doesn't know when He is going to come. He is being obedient. He does say one thing. He says, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. What does that mean? I think that this particular part of this chapter has to do with the fall of Jerusalem. I think one of the reasons why we can say that is because Jesus has used this phrase, this generation, several times in the book of Mark, and always to evil people who do not believe in Him. And Jesus is saying this evil generation that has rejected Him will not pass away until the fall of Jerusalem. And it happened within 40 years. Jerusalem was destroyed. Now, I know that it's kind of tricky to try and figure out whether this applies to any other place in history. You know, when Israel became a state back in 1948, you know, there were a lot of prophecy teachers who said, oh, within 30 years after Israel became a state, Jesus Christ will come back. This generation will not pass away. You know, generation 30 years. 78 rolled around, nothing happened. At least not that I remember. 1988 rolled around, 40 years. Maybe a generation is 40 years. You know, I have a couple books on my shelf, 88 Reasons Why Jesus is Coming in 88. You know, 40-year generation. Well, nothing happened. Not that I remember. You know, it might be that a generation is 70 years. I don't know. Might be. And so we got a few years to go from that. Well, I think Jesus is saying, listen, you still don't know. You still don't know. That really is the main message in this part of this chapter, that we don't know when He's coming. I think it probably refers to a reference to the destruction of the temple. If it means something else, hallelujah. It's going to happen within 30 years or so. I don't know. Jesus gives us a lesson from the fig tree. And that fig tree message sums up all of Jesus' warnings in this section. That we do not know what time He's going to come. You know, trees grow, they get fruit, they get leaves, they die. You know, the seasons come and go. Yes, Jesus is coming again, but we don't know exactly when. We do know that Jesus' words abide. Now, again, there's a switch in this chapter from all of these things to that day and hour. And I think Jesus might be switching, again, from the fig tree being a reference to the fall of Jerusalem, and the rest of this chapter being to the fall of the world. But I'm still not sure. Again, he reminds us that nobody knows the day or the hour. Jesus was obedient when it came to who got to sit in his right hand and his left hand. Remember, James and John came to him and said, "Can we sit at your right and left?" And Jesus says, "That's not for me to decide. That's for God to decide." And again, he's being obedient. He's saying, it's not for me to decide. I'll just be patient and wait for God to come and wait for God to decide when we're coming. And finally, in this chapter, it ends with this parable about the doorkeeper. He affirms that those people who are valiant under fire and those people who are vigilant during the delay, those people will get to go to heaven. We'll be ready for him. We need to be watching. We don't know what time he's going to come, but we do know that we have jobs to do. We are servants in his house, and everyone has a job, whether you're the doorkeeper or whether you're the janitor or whether you're the construction worker or whatever job you have in the house. You need to be doing your job while we are waiting. Now, in trying to apply this to our lives, there are some of us who like very calm assurance about the end. And if you want to read about Jesus' last words on this earth, you should go to the book of John, where John says another comforter will come and everything will be all right, and I have to go to heaven, but I'm leaving someone here with you. But Jesus also gives us a lot of fireworks, a lot of end of the world kind of stuff, a lot of horrible things happening. And some people like one and some people like the other. Jesus gave us both. He wants us to know that the world will end, but we do not have anything to worry about as believers. Now the problem with this sermon, maybe all my sermons, is that it contains far more puzzles than it does answers. And really that's what we do face when we have prophecy. I think we need to study it. I think we need to understand it as best we can, so when that day happens, when all of these things occur, we will go, "Oh yeah, I read about that." That's what that is. But it really has more puzzles than it has answers. But what Mark wants us to know is not the answers to the puzzles. He wants us to know the implications of those puzzles, the implications of what he has told us. And the things that he has told us is that we need to have courage and that we need to continue at our jobs and we need to continue to work. He uses this sermon to exhort us to love and good deeds. It contains 17 commands. How many times have you heard a prophecy preacher speak about the commands that Jesus gives? He tells us to watch a whole bunch of times, to be on the alert, to make sure that we're paying attention, to make sure that we are doing the things that God has called us to do. 17 commands in this chapter. Christians need to be forewarned so that we can be forearmed. Are we using the things that we have today to help us to be strengthened, to help us to grow, to help us to understand what kind of character God has, so that when false teachers arise, we'll understand this is not the character of God and this is. Mark wants to inspire faith and endurance and hope in this chapter. He also wants to ensure the faint-hearted. He has told us earlier in this chapter that when you stand before kings and people are put you on trial for your faith, you will have exactly the words you're supposed to say. You don't have to worry about whether or not you're courageous enough to stand up during this time, because God has promised that he will give us grace for the moment. We need to be assured that God has everything under control, whether it's the fall of our world or it's the fall of the world. Things may look bleak and hope may seem gone, but God is in control. This is one of the things that he has told us. One of the things that we've proven over and over again in our lives, that God is amazingly in control of our lives. We continue to say, though, tell us when these things are going to happen. And we're going to do this because we really want to know. You know, this is a great curiosity that we have. In spite of Jesus' disclaimer, a lot of people have said that they've decoded the message. Well, we might not know the signs and the seasons, but we can know the year. You know, I'm going, no.